All right, everyone. Welcome to Tiger Talk Tuesday. We're at episode 55, and we've got special guest Dorian Pickens in the house. Welcome, Dorian.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you here. For those of you that do not know Dorian, he's a former professional basketball player who graduated from Stanford University and was with the Boston Celtics organization as part of their G League team. He epitomizes resilience and determination in his journey from the court to the boardroom, which you'll hear all about in our conversation, despite facing challenges, including overcoming foot injuries and navigating the demanding identity associated with professional sports. Dorian's perseverance led him to excel both academically and athletically. His achievements, such as being named Pac-12 Scholar Athlete of the Year, amazing, and earning academic All-American honors, attest to his unwavering commitment to success. With experience playing professionally within the Boston Celtics organization and competing professionally in Europe, Dorian focuses his energy on staying true to himself and the multifaceted individual that he is. And we will hear all about it. His invaluable contributions as a businessman for Nike, a global strategic thought leader for Adidas, and most recently in strategy and business operations at its Fanatics, underscore his ability to thrive in the face of adversity and continually push the boundaries of possibility. Awesome. Welcome, welcome.
That was incredible. I was going to say, what an intro.
Woo! Well, it's your life, so it's your journey. Let's dig right in. Let's talk about your younger years. I mean,
Sure.
had you what got you into basketball? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah. My father got me into basketball. I think like a lot of athletes growing up, it was really my parents. My dad more so coming from an interesting background. My mother and her side of the family are from Ukraine, and my dad's from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So big Crimson Tide fan. Grew up playing basketball, football,
Yeah.
any sport kind of under the sun. And he introduced me to sports at a really young age, probably 2 or 3 years old. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and would always watch highlight tapes of my favorite athletes, whether it was Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, any tapes that he would leave me, any action figures, bobbleheads he would bring home from work or from school. Really got me into sports at a young age, and I kind of took it and ran with it.
Yeah, and I mean, what a dream. I mean, it's one thing to play a sport that you love, but to be able to play it at some of the highest levels, I mean, is a dream for many. Let's talk about that journey to Stanford. What was that experience like for you?
It was a interesting one as well. I think super difficult, obviously, for anyone who is able to play long into their late teens, early 20s, etc. But for me, I think my journey was unique in a lot of ways. My mom was very heavily kind of on me in terms of finishing your academics, doing the best you can in the classroom. You're not going to practice unless you finish your homework. That's my mom and that's her background and how she was raised. And my dad
Yeah,
was pushing me full go as kind of, my coach growing up in
yeah.
a lot of ways and, wanting to see me succeed. A lot of times pushing me harder than my teammates or the other people on my team as I was his son and he was the coach for a lot of those years. But all things considered was, an incredible experience. And I really dabbled with other sports here and there, baseball, soccer, but basketball was really my true calling. I think for a lot of reasons, I was always a bigger kid growing up, which helped in a lot of ways, being taller than the
Six
rest
six.
in
What did you
basketball.
say? 6'6"?
Yep, so I'm about 6'5", 6'6", in there, which in the professional basketball terminology, that's one of the smaller guys on the court nowadays. But growing up was always taller, and so stuck with basketball kind of through all my elementary years, middle school, high school. And it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot of intangible things such as work ethic, how to prioritize your life accordingly, especially as a teenager or a young kid who
Yeah.
all you want to do is hang out with your friends, right? And it gave me something to work towards and be passionate about something I wanted to dedicate myself to. And so as I kind of approached the college scene or ultimately deciding to go to Stanford, I was fortunate enough to be a top 100 player in the country and have 30 40 scholarship offers kind of on the table at the time. And so extremely grateful, I think, in that moment in a lot of ways, more so than you realize maybe at that age, but also an incredible journey to be able to have schools who will pay for your education, pay for you to be able to play and practice the sport that you love in hopes that you can reach the professional ranks as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I love that your mom had such a focus on education because at some point, sports end for all of us in the sense of that level that we want to play at. So it's pretty amazing. What was the saying that you said your mom always said about the ball? What did she say?
Yeah, she would always say the ball is eventually going to stop bouncing, or the
Yeah.
ball won't bounce forever, right? And
Yeah.
it's something I think was so true, to my story. And Stanford was actually the first school that had ever reached out to me in terms of recruiting me as a 13, 14-year-old kind of freshman in high school. I remember I was sitting in class and, my coach came over and handed me a letter and put it on my desk. And I kind of had to sit there all class, and I didn't want to open it right in that moment, right? And like in front of the whole class. So I saved it, until my mom had picked me up from school. We get in the car, and her being the kind of academic savant that she was ecstatic,
Oh,
right?
I
And
can
she's
only
like, "Oh my
imagine.
God,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, you got a letter from Stanford. That's incredible. She's like, you're gonna go there. This is what you're gonna do." And I'm, hold on, mom. Like, let's take it easy. This is the first one. Let's see what happens
Yeah.
throughout the journey. But as I got older, especially throughout high school, and as I started looking at myself, I think early on, and a lot of that credit goes to her, as more than just an athlete. Stanford just became the perfect kind of place for me to continue to chase my dreams, and then
Yeah.
also grow and develop as a human being, right? And kind of melting the best of both worlds in terms of sport, and then in terms of kind of outside of sport or off the court or after sport kind of ends, preparing you for what that would be like. And
Yeah, for
so I
sure.
definitely attribute it to her.
Well, good job, mom and dad. How was, let's talk about that, because I know that is a major transition for an athlete. I mean, you go from being obviously this standout player to surrounded by so many other skilled and other individuals in the classroom and on the court. What was that like for you? How did you manage that transition, and what was your experience like?
Yeah, I would say it was a difficult transition for sure. And I tell people all the time, I think one of the first and most challenging transitions that I had to go through as an athlete actually came my freshman year of college. Kind of like what you were saying, having all of these accolades and seeing yourself at a certain standard, kind of coming out of high school and being a 17, 18-year-old kid, and you're going to the next level where everyone now was the best from where they came from. They're multiple years older than you. That team that
Yeah.
I was a part of my freshman year had a ton of NBA guys on it, a high level team, right? And for me, it was difficult in that, just from the sport aspect, I guess, starting there, that adjustment, right? It's super difficult because you're playing against guys that are bigger, faster, stronger, older, have more kind of credentials, wisdom, experience under their belt. And so in a lot of ways, they're going to get, the minutes, they're going to play more, they're going to do all these things. And for me, it's show shock in a way, right?
Mm,
Because you think you're going to come in and maybe not be the guy, but you want to contribute as much as you can. And whether that's, in practice and playing in the games, obviously, is what we all strive to do. And my freshman year was a big moment for me. Then in terms of, I had to look in the mirror and look at where I
yeah.
wanted to go, where I wanted to take my career, how much did I love the sport that I was playing, and if I was, dedicated enough to chase after those dreams and aspirations, I had to have the work ethic to match, right? I
Mm,
had to have the patience to match. I had to have, the right resources and the right people around me to help me succeed and help me reach those goals. And so my freshman year was huge in that sense. It was also a new environment for me academically, in a lot of ways, where you're coming from being one of the more esteemed students just in general, in high school. And now you're going to Stanford University, where it's the brightest and most brilliant minds, from across the world, right? And so
yeah.
class is extremely challenging. The athletic piece is extremely challenging. Trying to balance those two things, especially when they're both giving you extreme adversity, taught me
Yeah.
a lot. Taught me a lot about myself. Taught me a lot about what I want in life, how important it is to keep certain people around you, and what to give your time, energy, and effort towards.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think that kind of freshman year set me on a trajectory, for success for the years later.
I love that. We talk a lot about, I get a lot of questions around confidence and developing that in kids. And obviously, I mean, running towards adversity is one of the quickest way to grow, right? What would you say how would your journey through confidence? What was that journey like for you over your journey as a player? When did you find, at what stage did you find you struggled with it maybe the most? And when did you really own it?
That's a great question, and I think a lot of my confidence comes from the way I was brought up. Early on, I was an only child, so all of the confidence, love, admiration, criticism, whatever it was from my parents, my family, whoever, all came to me. In a lot of ways, that fueled me to continue to be the best that I could, right? To not only make myself proud and enjoy the sport that I'm playing and that I love, but also not to let others down, right? Or to prove them right in a lot of ways. And so when I hit adversity come college, it did hit my confidence, right, in a lot of ways,
Mm-hmm.
because the thing that I had been so good at for so long,
Mm-hmm.
now I wasn't the best, that was there, right? And same thing came for the academic portion. I was no longer the smartest kid in school, in a lot of ways. And so it hits your confidence, I think, innately, just being in an environment like that. And to me, it kind of comes and it came down to really how do you approach it, and the perspective that I gained throughout that process of losing confidence, hitting roadblocks. And it's like you can either be greatly successful at
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is you're doing. Um, and I like to use the term, or you can learn and grow, right?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily win or lose, it's not necessarily succeed or fail. A lot of those adverse moments are opportunities for you to grow and develop as a person. And so through that, my confidence was low. What am I going to do? Right. And I think two main things kind of stood out during that period of time. And it's work your tail off, right?
Yeah.
Work as hard as you can and make sure that you're the most prepared, whether it's from a practice standpoint, whether it's from a class and test standpoint, putting in the work to ensure that you're ready come game day, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
a test, whether that's a lecture, whether that's a presentation, or whether it's an actual game day. And then also surrounding myself with people who are going through similar things, I think was huge. And
Mm-hmm.
leaning on my teammates who are going through similar experiences, sharing a meal. I could probably name to you 50 to 100 dinners that we would have, throughout a year, throughout a season, that were so meaningful and valuable to us just because we're able
Yeah.
to break bread with one another and say, hey, I'm having a tough week, right? This
Yeah.
is a really bad, week for me practice wise. Class is killing me, whatever it was. And so work ethic, during those times of maybe lack of confidence, were huge for me. And then also leaning on those people that I had kind of in my close proximity or close circle, for help or even for emotional support as well.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I always say life's currency is showing up, and if you
Yeah,
want to achieve things, I mean, it is all about putting in that work. I always loved there was a saying that said, "You can't be upset for the results you didn't get from the work you didn't do." And I say that all the time to myself. Like when I've hit goals, I know when I achieve something, I have gone 1,000%. I'm doing the work, I'm putting the time. Um, Examining it, giving myself the proper feedback, pivoting along the way. And whenever I kind of am short of a goal, it's like, well, did you really put that your full effort in? And I always know the answer. So I love that you lean on that and you grow, right? Through the work ethic piece. So I
exactly.
love that you shared that. So for those athletes that are listening, work ethic and lean on your community and your support friends or family and share because it is a highlight reel on social media or any of those places.
Exactly.
It looks like everybody has their life all together and we know that's not the case, right? So
Exactly.
okay, so you graduate from Stanford, which was a pretty magical day. What was that day like for you?
It was incredible. I think for me, it was a once in a lifetime moment or experience. I think just in terms of graduating from college, like many, but also for me, kind of on my personal journey, it was such a kind of landmark moment in my life, is just because I was able to successfully complete a chapter along the journey, right? And,
Mm,
and you speak about social media or life nowadays as a highlight reel because they don't show the journey, right? You
yeah.
don't get to see the tough times, the times that were extremely challenging where you learned a lot, or the prolonged periods of success, or maybe even sadness and loneliness, right? That it takes to reach these pinnacle
Yeah.
moments. And for me, graduation was a pinnacle moment
Yeah.
in a lot of ways because I had worked so hard, and the people around me and my friends and family who were there kind of along the way were all able to be on campus, and shed tears of joy. My girlfriend was there, has been my rock kind of throughout the entirety of my portion of my collegiate life, and then the entirety of my professional life. And so it was so great to just have everyone there and be able to celebrate this moment with me as I kind of prepared to tackle the next chapter of my life, which would kind of be the professional sports world,
Yeah, tell us about
which I was
that.
so excited about.
Where
Yeah,
were you
so
when you got the news that you were invited to play?
so I guess just to level set and going back to how difficult that freshman year for me was, it taught me a lot of things about how to structure the remaining years of my college life,
Mhm.
my undergraduate life, right? And so throughout that process, I knew that I wanted to, towards my senior year, the end of my senior year, be in a position where my final quarter of school, I could fully dedicate to the NBA draft process, right? And so I had got to my senior year, and My course load was low. I think I only had about 1 or 2 classes maximum at that period in time. And so I was really able to fully give myself to basketball and being a professional and training, in Southern California with my agency and a number of other kind of NBA draft prospects at the time, whether it was
Mhm.
flying around to certain NBA teams for workouts or they're flying into town to watch us work out kind of, in California and doing whatever it was under the sun to really maximize my chances and opportunities to be a part of an NBA organization, excuse me. And that was an incredible time, right? Because that's
Yeah.
what you work, for 15 years of my life to finally get the opportunity to play with the best, right? That you grew up kind of watching, and now you're kind of knocking at the door, waiting to get in, right? And so for me, it was great to go through that experience.
Yeah.
However, it was also a great pivoting point and kind of learning moment because I didn't get drafted, right? And kind of coming off some injuries and not feeling my best and then not finding the right opportunity. My first year out of college, I actually played overseas in Europe for about 9 or 10 months. And so for me, again, it comes down to perspective, right? And success would have looked like probably getting drafted and making an NBA roster and doing summer league and going to training camp and doing all of these things, right? Um, However, that wasn't my path. That wasn't part of my journey. And my journey was going over to Europe and playing for a year overseas, which was a big moment for me in terms of becoming an athlete, at the professional level, becoming a professional in general. I think it taught me so much just about how to mature, how to grow up, as a young adult, and really how to prioritize your life if you want to be a professional athlete for the long term, and at the highest, ability that you can be.
Was there something that you struggled with to prioritize that you kind of after a couple times you're like, "Okay, Dorian, I need to be making this decision instead of this," that it's like when you're on your own? Or do you feel like you had that structure already in place because of Stanford and everything had really set you up for success?
I feel like it's a little bit of both. I feel like that structure for me was in a good place, especially by the time I reached graduation and kind of had gone through like the pre-draft process with the NBA. However, I think when you're going overseas, as an American or going anywhere that's far away from home or far away from what you're used to, you reach a different level of kind of nervousness in a way, right? Just around what will happen next. You're in a completely new environment. You're with a completely new group of people, a completely new
Mhm.
team, coach,
Culture.
management, culture, all of these things, right? That
Yeah.
are kind of in this melting pot of, yes, you want to play basketball, but yes, this is also a business, right? And this is
Mhm.
what it takes to be successful if you want to do that. And so for me, moving over to Europe, oftentimes we have two a day throughout the week. We have a game, we might have a two a day the next day. And so it's very rigorous in terms of work ethic, right? And I think that's
Mhm.
something that I kind of, from my Stanford experience, had nailed down. But at the same time, there's also a feeling of being extremely distant from maybe where you see yourself wanting to be, right? And for me, that was the NBA. And for me, that was, being stateside and being able to play, amongst the best and being able to call my family and invite them to a game, calling your friends and being like, hey, I'm coming to New York soon. If you want to come to the game, I got a few tickets for you and we can catch up after. Like all of these things kind of are in this world of professional sports that we all kind of know.
Mhm.
However, when you're an American and playing overseas, that's not always the case, right? And so it's really just you, your dream, and your current teammates in a new environment. And so for me, it allowed me to really focus in and lock in kind of on the athletic piece and focus my time on being the best basketball player that I could be so that I could get that opportunity to potentially break into an NBA organization the following year.
Yeah, for sure. And what was that like being in the G League for you?
It was good. For me, it was again. I think it comes in phases, and at that point, in time, once I kind of came back from Europe and signed with the Celtics, went to training camp briefly, and then was with their G League team. It's a whirlwind of emotions, I think, right? And even though I didn't have an extended tenure with the NBA team or anything like that, going to training camp, being a part of an organization that's one of the most successful and world-renowned programs in the world, regardless of sport, in the Boston Celtics, which is interesting because I kind of grew up on the West Coast, so I was a Kobe fan and Laker fan, but we'll save that. It was an incredible kind of experience. Again, right? You walk into the practice facility. and you see banners for as far as you can, see down the court. And just that championship kind of mentality and that blue collar type of work ethic that it takes to get to such a level of success in anything, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, this is the example of sports, but it was really humbling experience, in a lot of ways, just to have that opportunity, that I had worked so hard to get, to get a chance to be a part of something, I was bigger than myself, and to be somewhere where I wanted to be and had seen kind of my idols at that same level was an incredible experience,
Yeah.
right? And something that I also valued in a lot of ways because I was around the best people in this field in the world, right? And I think that's a lot of the reason why I ended up going to Stanford. That's a lot of the reason why, I enjoy my time with the Celtics and kind of a part of the NBA family, in a lot of ways, is because being around the best, I think, brings the best out of me and so many others, right? And that's something I truly value and cherish. And I've tried to carry with me, throughout my time after basketball as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the topic, obviously, we talk about transitioning to life after sports, and you had a couple injuries or nagging injuries that kind of never fully healed, it sounded like. Is that right? Is that correct to say?
Yep, exactly. So my senior year, I tore my plantar fascia kind of on the bottom of my foot. And in an effort to kind of get on the court quick, took as much time as I needed to kind of get healthy, but didn't undergo surgery or anything like that. Even though maybe I should have for the long run, I will never know. But
Yeah.
extensive rehabbing and all of that fun stuff, but it never really fully healed in a lot of ways, and it was one of the nagging kind of injuries that as you get older, you kind of get that lingers, right? And so dealing with injuries, I think, is a part of sports, and something that over time takes a toll, on your mental as well.
Yeah. And when did you start thinking about, maybe this is my time to go? I mean, because it definitely, you hear it all the time with athletes when they're trying to leave. It's kind of like, should I, shouldn't I? Is it the right time? Or did you walk away at a time when you're like, no, I'm pretty sure this is what I meant to do? Or was it more of a, you're wrestling with the decision? What was that experience like for you?
I think it's, again, it's a journey. For me, it wasn't necessarily one moment that I realized, hey, this is kind of over for me. I would say, though, it was during my time with the Celtics G League team, kind of based out of Maine, where I really started to have those conversations with myself, right? Just in terms of, do I love the game at the level that I know I need to in order to be at the places that I want to be? Having those conversations with, friends, family, obviously my agent, who I was really close with, mentors, and all the likes. I think for me, it was more so a conversation of, I didn't want to make a fear-based decision,
Mm,
right? And I think a lot of times when athletes are looking to transition out of sports, they try to hold on to sport maybe a little bit too long because they're in fear of what's on the other side,
for
right?
sure.
And vice versa. Sometimes, you're scared of whatever the sports world is providing you, and you're actually scared to move on or whatever it is, right? And so I didn't want to make a fear-based decision in a lot of ways. And it wasn't like even though I officially retired at the end of 2020, not a decision kind of based upon COVID. I didn't want it to be anything related to that, even though it's tough to separate the two given the time that I did
Yeah.
retire.
Yeah.
But for me, it was more so looking at the right time to exit the sport. If my love had faded for it, and I knew it needed to be at a level to reach my, next goal that I had kind of on the checklist, it'd be really tough to get there, and it wouldn't be right by being a professional athlete in general, right? And so it was a piece of that. It was also a piece of, do I want to have my identity for the next 5, 10, 15 years be tied solely to sport? A large reason why I went to Stanford was to build up myself and be more than just an athlete, not
Yeah.
only be a player, not only be in the sports world forever,
When did you
not just be,
recognize that difference? Because I find,
yeah,
yeah, you say like sports are what you do, they're not who you are. But as athletes, that's one of the biggest hurdles that they have to overcome because they do identify with their sport. When did you have that moment where you really realized that? Was it when you were at Stanford, or because your mom was always saying eventually the basketball stops bouncing?
yeah, exactly. And I think it happened through my mother early on.
Yeah.
Whether I had realized it at that time or not, probably not. But it was so frequent, and I was hearing it so many times subconsciously that it did sink in, over
Yeah.
time that I wasn't just an athlete, right? This is not my entire identity. And you see it in my decision making. And I go to Stanford. If I wanted to only play sports, maybe I go to another university,
Mhm.
right? And then you see it as I get older and I have my Stanford career and I move on and I start to think, hey, I'm really into business. I love fashion. I love kind of the design space. I love sustainability. And there's all these things that I enjoy and I'm super passionate and interested in that have nothing to do with making a three pointer, right?
Yeah.
That have nothing to do with playing basketball. And so I started to really see that as well, kind of after Stanford, and even my first year when I was in Europe, because I'm looking at my classmates doing amazing things in tech. I'm looking at
Mhm.
them go into the venture capital space and
Yeah,
maybe
that's
be
true.
investors somewhere. And it's so cool to see all those things happening. And it's
Yeah.
like, hey, I want to part of that, right? At some point in time. And I don't know when that time might be. And for me, when that love started to seep away and I started to really give those, outside kind of interests a little bit more time and attention, for me, it seemed like the right time to walk away, and I'll be the first one to say I was at that time probably the best player that I had ever been.
Yeah, for sure. And was there a period
So
though,
yeah,
like you made the decision, you felt good about it, but did you have a little bit of few months where you struggled and you really missed that routine because it was just so ingrained in you?
1000%. And it's always so bizarre because I remember vividly the first day after I announced my retirement and called my agent and did all these things, called the organization, hey, I'm done playing. The next day I woke up and I'm like, so what do I do? Right?
Yeah.
Where do I fill my time up with? A piece I'm leaving out of the story is throughout my time with the Celtics, I was able to get my real estate license in California through kind of MBA programs that allow you to continue your education, which are great. I think one of the huge benefits and maybe the biggest benefit of playing professional sports is your access to opportunities is
Yeah.
huge, right? And so for me, it was taking advantage of that in this regard, in terms of looking at a potential area of interest that I had outside of basketball. I was able to get my real estate license, which was amazing and which kind of probably pushed me over the ledge in terms of really retiring. And so that next day, as I'm saying, after I woke up from the day after retiring, and I'm like, okay, so do I call somebody? Like, do I need to set up some meetings? What's exactly this run a show now
Do I have
that
to
the
watch some
schedule?
film?
Right. Do I need to watch film? Do I still go
Yeah.
work out in the morning, or like
Yeah.
am our duties are relieved? Right. And so I definitely think a couple months after, there's definitely like a transitionary period that took place that was a mixture of emotions. I was actually 3 months or so after I retired, started working in kind of this capital markets financial role for a huge commercial real estate company out of Los Angeles. Amazing opportunity that I was
Mhm.
super excited for, in a lot of ways. I think just because it was something new and something that was,
Yeah.
so foreign to me, and I was able to explore something that I had never explored before. Um, in the same breath, I think it was extremely terrifying, right? Because I
Yeah.
didn't know what to expect.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
didn't know what was laying on the other side. And I think that's all part of this journey of life that us athletes go through. And that transitionary period is not seamless all the time, right? And even though it may look like someone goes from, playing a professional sport right into something new, that wasn't the case for me. And I know that's not the case for so many others.
Yeah, and I mean, a main driving reason to start this series is because we had lost some friends who couldn't transition to life after sports, and some go the route of exercise, some go the route of drugs and alcohol, some completely are lost in their that identity shift and they can't move from it. So, what would you say? I mean, a big part of this series is my goal is to help those suffering in silence that haven't
Yeah.
had enough courage to share that they're going through a tough time. I mean, we're so used to being validated by the name on the back of the jersey, right? And the minute you're not that person, it's like, well, I'm supposed to be. How would you advise an athlete who's suffering in silence? What would your top like 2 3 things be for them to do to help them slowly transition back into that feel good headspace that they might be
Yeah,
missing?
definitely. And sorry to hear that. It's so tough. And I've been in, unfortunately, in a similar situation where I've had friends who played professional sports that also had an extreme difficulty kind of with that identity and that transition out of playing, and who
Mm,
have since passed as well. And so mental health to me has been huge. I think across my, even late into my collegiate career and then following my collegiate career, even till this day, it's been huge. Whether it's
yeah.
speaking with a sports psychologist, whether it's talking with friends and family, and having difficult conversations, whether it's just taking time in terms of a mental breather from the day to
Hmm.
day pressures and struggles of life, are all things that are there with sports and without sports, right? And I
Yeah.
think as athletes, we have a sense of kind of this superhero esque type of life that we live, right? And sometimes we feel like we're invincible. And when, pressure hits or tough times hit, we can always work through it and we don't need help. When in
Yeah.
reality, we do, right? And for me, my advice would be seeking help in whatever form that looks like. For me, it was speaking with a sports psychologist at first. And now I have a ton of friends in a mental health community, of people that I can rely on, as kind of people who are just there for me, right? So I
Yeah.
don't have to struggle in silence because so many of us are struggling in silence day to day, but maybe are too proud or are too scared to put our pride aside and have those conversations because they're real, right? And
Hmm.
we've seen tragedy happen. Both you and I have experienced it kind of firsthand, and it's very serious, right? And it's extremely sad, and um, never wanting anyone to experience that level of grief or that level of loneliness, or embarrassment or lack of identity at times, is something that's huge to me, right? And so being present in every moment, is also something that I think after sports even hits a little bit harder for me, because I'm able to cherish the journey a little bit more, right?
Hmm.
And having played professional sports, that's an unbelievable journey. Having played sports, into college is an incredible journey. And being thankful for all those times that you had and all those people that you met and all those experiences that you share with individuals, those last a lifetime, right? And even when you retire, there's a whole another side of life that you've never experienced before, right?
And it is
I
funny how that comes full
yeah,
circle. I've got a group chat with all my girls that I played at UNH with for hockey, and it's interesting how like the world of sports is crossing back through my life again. I mean, I'm in my 40s. I'm 42, so but it's interesting how all those connections are coming back full circle and in ways like where I'm speaking to their teams or now it's just such
right.
a wonderful thing to see. What so you said sports psychologist. Do you
Yep,
journal? I talk a lot about journaling and reflection in my day to day, and it's something that I really push and teach on others. And yeah,
of
journal.
course, of course, of
um,
course.
how important to you do you believe in journaling?
I love journaling. I'm huge on journaling. I think for a number of reasons, right? Just to like get your thoughts out there, I think is like step number one. And whether it's verbally and talking to a sports psychologist, or whether it's just writing it down. For
Mm,
me, I started journaling. Um, I think in a lot of ways, just because I hadn't been writing much. I'd been typing, or I'm texting, or I'm on a phone call or a FaceTime. And so for me, journaling was great just in terms of having moments of self reflection,
mm-hmm.
to start the day physically writing something down with a pen or a pencil, whatever your preferred, method of jotting down notes is. It's huge for me, something that I do on the daily. I'm always writing things down, whether it's notes for myself, quotes I hear that are great, individuals that I haven't talked to in a while that I'm like, hey, I should really check in on them and see how they're doing.
Mm.
It could be a teammate, could be a family member, anything and everything is kind of in my notebooks, that I have kind of lying around the house, because journaling is great. I think it's a great thing to practice. And once I kind of graduated from journaling and moved into the sports psychologist space or therapist space, and then kind of opened me up into, as I was mentioning, kind of this mental health community in a lot of ways of former friends and athletes from Stanford, who I connected with along the way, who played professional sports or maybe did not, or even passing the word forward to, younger kids that I'm around speaking to at a camp or on a team that, I know the coaches of, whatever it is. Um, I think that piece is equally important as the actual physical aspect of playing the game. right? It's the mental
Absolutely.
aspect.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm wildly passionate about that too. Now you go from playing and leaving sport and then Nike, Adidas, and you're with is it Fanatics? Did I say that
Yep.
Fanatics? Yep. And are you noticing some correlations from when you played to when you're doing these roles with these companies? I mean, sometimes I know we're afraid to leave sport, but there's a lot of transferable skills, even if you're not physically in a uniform or getting that endorphin rush. What has that journey been like to work with Nike, to work with Adidas? Those are some big names.
Yeah, it's been great, and I think you're so right in that there are a ton of parallels that you can draw between playing sports and working on the other side. And for me, it wasn't immediate. You know, as I was mentioning, I went into commercial real estate kind of first in this financial analyst role that was, you know, cool and fun and sexy and all these things, high paying. And it wasn't for me, right?
Yeah.
It just wasn't something that I was passionate enough about, that I wanted to do for a long time. Something that I didn't see myself in, you know, even in the short term. And so that's kind of when Nike came along, and through some connections I had over at the NBA and then other alumni through of Stanford, the opportunity came about to be kind of on the business side of sports,
Mhm.
right? With one of the obviously most well-known and recognized brands ever, over at the Swoosh. And so being a part of Nike was great. I was kind of in this business development, growth consulting role, that allowed me to kind of be on the business side of sports and look at from a brand perspective, you know, how do we grow and expand, you know, kind of our footprint and what kind of consumers do we go after. And it was great in that it was something that was anchored in things that I was passionate about and loved. Sport was huge. I grew up kind of a sneakerhead and collecting sneakers and clothes, fashion, all that stuff. And then also you're working alongside like-minded individuals who are also passionate in some of the same spaces you are, right?
Mhm.
Who also are dedicated to wanting to, you know, provide and shape that next generation of athletes, which is huge. And you kind of bond in those ways, and then you
Yeah.
bring all those intangible communication skills, and all those other things that kind of sport teaches you along the way. And they're hugely pivotal kind of in the business space as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And what are you doing at Fanatics now? Today, this is your current role, right? But
Yep. So it's my current role. So I was at Nike for about a year. I was at
yeah,
Adidas for about 2 years, doing some global strategy work, kind of with basketball innovation and some of our partnerships. Now I'm at Fanatics doing kind of strategy and business operations. And so really exciting time to kind of be with the company, especially as it's expanding so rapidly, in a global sense, as well. So just looking at, again, kind of from a true businessman perspective, how can we continue to improve our kind of internal operations, whether that's, you know, improving or enhancing our kind of licensing, I guess you would call it arsenal in a
yeah,
lot of ways, whether it's setting up new kind of tech stack, um, in our internal workings, all the way through expanding our business again more globally.
very
And it's
cool.
been amazing. It's been super, super, super cool. You know, in the short time I've been here already, to not only get to again be on the kind of business side of sport, but at the same time, surround myself with the best of the best. You know, a lot of people that I'm working with now are from the Nikes of the world, or from, you know, huge consulting firms and BCG, and or it could be big tech companies like Apple, Meta, Google. And so it's really a true melting pot of individuals from different industries that are all kind of coming together and putting their heads together, under the Fanatics umbrella, and looking at how can we do something that's special, right? And I feel like that's very similar in the team
Yeah,
aspect of putting together, you know, a group of teammates to win a championship or win a
yeah,
game. And
for
so
sure.
very
And
cool.
can we catch you on the court anywhere, or have you hung up your basketball shoes?
You can catch me on the court sparingly. Sparingly. Not I don't play as much as I used to, obviously. I played quite a bit. I've actually just relocated to Texas, but when I was living in Southern California, a number of teammates and old friends of mine from Stanford lived in Southern California, so we would go to a local men's league and wreak havoc, right? But I don't play too often, and I'm looking
No.
for actually a new pickup, you know, home court here in Dallas. So if there's any listeners that are tuning in that have recommendations in the Dallas Fort Worth area, definitely let me know.
Yeah, it's funny as someone, I mean, I played and then there was quite a few years where I didn't really, I mean, I was in the middle of building my business at that time and then having babies and then I went through breast cancer, so I was off, but I remember when I got back on the ice, And it truly, once it was tough and I missed it. I remember skating that first time and I had a bath that night and I just started crying because I was like, I loved being back, but I was like, what my body was telling my body to do, my body was not in the same shape. And I was like, oh my goodness. But it recaptured the love of just playing the game again without all the pressure I'd put on myself before. So that was really neat. And I do find any athletes that I speak to, you put them back in their field of sport if they're able to, it just reinvigorates them. So that's really cool. I want to know when you find a team, okay? You got to tell me.
I was gonna say, yeah, I definitely will have to let you know because it's an interesting one. In to your point, I had similar experiences. I think as well. It's like when you get back on the court or you get back on the ice, there's a dual sided emotion that you feel. It's like one, you start to get like the competitive juices flowing and you're
Yeah.
starting to get warmed up, even though your body is probably not ready for it. And then in a lot of ways, also, I think you get like the PTSD of like what you had experienced while playing sport, and all the
Yeah.
negatives start to overwhelm you as well. Like, I don't know why I
That's what your
didn't miss all
journal's
these
for.
training sessions. Exactly. That's what your journal is for, to kind of keep you even keel. Um, because yeah, it's always funny when you hang them up and then you think about getting back out there or going to a game. It's always
I know.
a
I
unique
know when you
perspective.
see a game, you just want to be out there even more, especially when it's really good. I look at the PWHL now and I'm like, my gosh, I'm just 20 years too late. But I look around and like they just had a record breaking 21,000 fans. I mean, it's such a great time for athletes. Well, I mean,
It is.
it's a pleasure hearing your story and congratulations on all your success to date. And I'm sure we'll see more from you. Any final words for any athletes watching, that advice that you'd like to leave them with? Again, I always go back to, the transitioning to life after sports and um, everyone's journey is different. Some jump ship right into, commentary, or they go back in their sport
Yeah.
and they get into it really quick and their transition actually doesn't hit them till a couple years later. Some they take a full year off. Everybody's, it looks different. Some they struggle. I had one gentleman, he was out of hockey for 10 years and now he's back in and he's coaching and training and he went through a really tough time. So what advice would you have? Everyone's journey is different for these athletes that are listening, who could be suffering in silence as we wrap
Yeah.
up the call.
I would say be present. And I think it's a cliche in some ways, but to me, it's always held so true. Be present, whether you're still playing, and actively playing. Be present in your workouts. Enjoy all the ups and downs that you go through.
Mhm.
And as it is a part of this journey of life, right? It's not a journey of sports. It's not a journey of sport. That's just one chapter along the way. And so be present, once you do retire or once you are going through those tough transitionary periods, lean on those around you. There's so many individuals, I think, such as yourself, such as myself, who are opening their arms, as wide as we can and willing to help in any way that we can, whether it's lending an ear, helping provide opportunities, ideas, mentorship, friendship, whatever it is,
Yeah,
along the way.
the power of a simple conversation for mental health. We carry that load and we don't
It's huge.
realize by just having a clearing and telling someone what's going on, you just feel this whole sense of like, oh, right. And it can alleviate all that pressure in your mind that affects your body stress wise, right? So we don't want to see that. But
Exactly.
no,
Exactly.
well,
And so I'm
so
always
many.
available.
Go
I'm always
ahead. Yeah,
available. I'm always available if anyone's listening and wants to reach out, connect, chat. Um,
I love that.
Please use me as a resource. Um, I'm willing to help and give my time up for anyone in any way that I can. I
I
think it's
love
always so
that.
important to pay it forward.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. And again, yes, reach out if anyone has any questions or concerns. Again, this was episode 55, transitioning to life after sports. We got Tiger Talk Tuesday with Dorian Pickens. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. See you guys.